everybody. This is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat. Hey, Lori, how are you today?
Hi, Omar. Doing fantastic. Thank you. How's everything in your world?
I can't complain. I'd take to say
Good.
Fantastic as well.
Yay. That's awesome. That's wonderful. It's what is it? What month is it anyway?
I know. Well, it's July, which is
okay.
shocking, right?
Okay,
it's
yeah.
Unbelievable how quickly this year is going by. Just like, I guess.
Crazy. I'm not kidding you. It seems like the older you get, the faster time flies. You know?
No,
there's actually a phenomenon that happens with humans with time flying as they get older. So interesting, but you have to Google it.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. I mean, I knew that's the saying, but it'd be cool to get to the science behind it, right?
Right.
Oh,
so today we have Ari Whitten, and he is truly an amazing guest. He is an author that's, he's a number one best-selling author. He has his newest book, Eat for Energy, How to Beat Fatigue, Supercharge Your Mitochondria, and Unlock All-Day Energy, is literally a best-selling book because what he's doing is he's helping people get to the core cause of really cellular health and upgrading that cellular health, and mitochondria being one of the most important points of that. And so, he gives us reasons why there's stuff going on in your mitochondria, dysfunction, and how we can repair these critical energy cells, and also strategies that will help boost our energy levels. And also he gives us tips on supplements to take to really help. So, I mean, there's so much info packed into this interview. You can't miss it. He's really a great expert.
Yeah, no, I definitely really enjoyed it as well. So yeah, let's jump into the show.
Okay.
Hey, Ari, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, nice. Thanks for stopping by, Ari. Really happy to have you. We've been looking forward to it.
Me too.
Yeah. So for those that don't know who you are, Ari Whitten, you are a functional medicine expert and the founder of the Energy Blueprint, which is also a book, isn't it, Ari?
The Energy Blueprint is an online program. It's the name of it's kind of a lot of things. It's the name of my overall brand. It's the name of my podcast, the Energy Blueprint podcast. And it's
which is fantastic.
Name of my sort of flagship program as well.
That's why I'm so
many
familiar
things
with
at
it.
once.
Yes. And now you are a best-selling author of Eat for Energy, How to Beat Fatigue, Supercharge Your Mitochondria, and Unlock All-Day Energy, which is fantastic. And I love mitochondria, so really excited to get you on today. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, if you love your mitochondria, they will love you back.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, so to that point, I don't want to disrespect Lori's love for mitochondria. So what exactly is mitochondria and what exactly does it do?
Yeah, so mitochondria are our cellular energy generators, and they are responsible for producing virtually all of the energy for virtually all of the trillions of cells in your body, from your brain cells to your heart cells, to your liver cells, to your intestinal cells, to your muscle cells, to the cells of your hormone-producing glands, and pretty much everything depend upon the energy produced by mitochondria. They were taught to us in high school and college biology as they're framed as the powerhouse of the cell, quote unquote, and really taught from the frame of them being these sort of mindless energy generators that just take in carbs and fats and pump out energy in the form of something called ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. But mitochondria have been known about for over 100 years now. But it's only in the last 10 years that I would argue that we really understand them well. Specifically, just in the last 10 years, it's been discovered that mitochondria are not just mindless energy generators, and they actually have a second role beyond their role in energy production. And that is a role in cellular defense. It turns out that mitochondria, in addition to being energy generators, are actually environmental sensors. They're exquisitely sensitive environmental sensors, and they are basically like the canaries in the coal mine of our body that are the most sensitive, the most upstream thing as far as detecting when something is off in the body. And they are basically constantly taking samples of what's the environment inside the body, basically asking the question, are we under attack? Is it safe to be producing energy right now? So they aren't just mindless energy generators taking in food, pumping out energy. They are actually deciding whether or not to produce energy. So these two functions, energy generation and cellular defense, are actually two sides of the same coin. And to the degree that mitochondria are doing one, they are not doing the other. So in other words, to the degree that mitochondria are sensing the presence of threats or stressors present in the body, and they can detect virtually every type of stressor you can think up, from environmental toxins to pathogens, infections, to sleep deprivation, to psychological stress, to poor nutrition, to basically everything. To the degree that they are sensing that the body is under stress and under attack, they are shifting resources towards cellular defense and shutting down energy production. And that is fundamentally what controls human energy levels. Our energy levels are a reflection of the degree to which our mitochondria are either in energy mode or defense mode.
And one easy test is, do you have energy? If you're lagging in energy, then there's a problem there with the mitochondria. And,
exactly.
In terms of your sensitivity, their sensing organs, cell danger response is another, they play an important role in that as well. Wouldn't you agree?
That's actually what I'm referring to. Yeah. So the main researcher who built out this understanding that I just described in sort of more common language is Dr. Robert Naviaux, who runs a lab for mitochondrial medicine at the University of California, San Diego. And he is the scientist who sort of did the most of the research that uncovered this second role of mitochondria, and he coined the term the cell danger response to describe exactly what I just explained, that this dual function of mitochondria and mitochondria as environmental sensors that are shutting down energy production in response to detecting threats.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is that if they sense danger, if you will, from anywhere in the body, then they become nervous and start actually reducing energy in the body, which is pretty much what you just said. So, yeah, and another thing is that they're very fragile, aren't they?
It's a good question and an interesting question. I'm hesitant to answer it because it's a long answer. I would say they are very sensitive environmental sensors that can pick up on threats, and they can be very fragile. The modern world is also fragilizing them and making them very susceptible to damage for a multitude of reasons we could talk about. But I won't go into that unless you want me to.
Oh no, I'm fine. Yeah, thank you. I was just I was just thinking about sugar. You know how simply eating sugar literally harms your mitochondria, simplistically.
Well, there actually is. There's not a huge amount of research on that specifically. So here's maybe what I would say is I think is a bit better way of thinking about it. Eating processed foods, a diet rich in processed foods, refined sugars and refined fats, and processed grains and things like that, and combinations of those, which most processed foods are combinations usually of like sugar, starches, refined oils. If you think of cookies and crackers and cakes and donuts and things like that, ice cream and stuff like that. can absolutely harm our energy and our mitochondria in a number of different ways. By harming gut health, and gut health in turn, for example, if you consume a lot of processed foods, you will alter your microbiome in such a way where you have lower amounts of bacterial species that are producing beneficial compounds, for example, like short chain fatty acids like butyrate, that help support mitochondrial function. There's something called a gut mitochondria axis. What's going on in the gut directly affects what's going on in the mitochondria. You will increase levels of certain bacterial species that have what's called endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide. And by creating negative shifts in that microbiome, you'll disrupt gut barrier function, increasing intestinal permeability. Now you've got undigested food particles and these lipopolysaccharides, these endotoxins leaking into your bloodstream, which are causing increased levels of inflammation, which is then sensed by mitochondria as a danger signal, and they're shutting down energy in response to. It's also the case that consumption of processed foods will, over time, lead to a chronic energy excess, which will result in the accumulation of excess body fat. The excess body fat itself creates increased it releases adipokines, so it increases inflammation. That is another source of shutting down mitochondrial energy production from the carrying of excess body fat itself. So that's another way that nutrition is linked with mitochondrial energy production. And another mechanism is insulin resistance. And let me put it this way. It's been shown that over 1/3 of adults in the US have reactive hypoglycemia, which is largely the result of excess body fat and insulin resistance, leading to low blood sugar levels 2 to 5 hours after eating. That is a stressor to mitochondria. It's also been shown that over 80% of the population has daily spikes of blood sugar into the pre-diabetic and diabetic ranges, which is also directly toxic to mitochondria. So I tend to look at the relationship of nutrition and mitochondrial function not so much from the perspective of, a specific food immediately causing damage, but how it's modifying the function of our gut and our hormones and our insulin sensitivity and our blood sugar regulation in such a way that's either allowing mitochondria to function well or is poisoning them.
Excellent. Thank you.
No, that was a great way to describe it. So obviously your book is called Eat for Energy. So is nutrition the majority of the equation when it comes to poor mitochondrial function?
Ooh, that's a hard question. It can be for some people. So like, let's say somebody's eating, somebody's chronically fatigued and they're eating a typical standard American diet. Yeah, you better believe that nutrition is probably the primary factor in their low energy levels. But it's also the case that there are several other big contributors to energy problems: circadian rhythm and sleep deprivation, psychological stress, body composition, gut health, brain health, light deficiencies and toxicities, environmental toxicants, hormetic stressors. There are many other factors that relate to this, but it is certainly the case that nutrition is one of the biggest and most important levers to pull on to optimize your energy levels.
That's interesting. Yeah. So in your experience, how many people right now are living with poor mitochondrial function?
It's been estimated by Frank Schallenberger that about 50% of people over the age of 40 have mitochondrial dysfunction. And also a large chunk of people under 40 have mitochondrial dysfunction as well. Another way of analyzing this, which actually there's quite a number of studies on, but very few people ever talk about, is there's sort of three layers to mitochondria that are really important to understand. Actually, maybe four. One would be something that most people, functional medicine doctors, I would say, focus on a lot, which is sort of supporting mitochondrial function by providing them with the nutrients and cofactors they need to function well. So, acetyl L-carnitine, alpha lipoic acid, PQQ, CoQ10, B vitamins, things like that. That tends to be where most functional medicine practitioners will focus on when they're trying to optimize mitochondrial function. Another layer to what mitochondria, actually just let me complete that thought. So it's possible mitochondria may not be functioning well purely as a result of deficiencies in those kinds of nutrients and cofactors necessary for them to work well and produce energy well. Another reason that mitochondria might not be functioning well, or often not functioning well, is what I described before. Basically, the presence of various aspects of the lifestyle and the environment that have certain kinds of stressors that the mitochondria are shutting down energy production in response to, whether that's psychological stress or hyperglycemia, high blood sugar levels, or excess body fat, or poor gut health, or light deficiencies and toxicities, or environmental toxicants, and they're, heavy metals and BPA, and, there's thousands of those different kinds of chemicals that can do that to mitochondria. So that's sort of box number 2, is, are mitochondria shutting down their energy production in response to lifestyle and environmental stressors? Box number 3 is basically that early on, that degree of mitochondrial dysfunction. So have your mitochondria actually incur damage, physical damage, such that they are dysfunctional. And that relates to the first 2 boxes, of course. Of course, some of these different toxic exposures, like let's say heavy metals or sleep deprivation, can actually result in mitochondrial damage and dysfunction over time. And then box number 4 is really important and not talked about often by most people. And that is, how many mitochondria do you have in your cells? So do you have it is possible to have cells that are either that have big, strong, robust, healthy mitochondria and lots of them. And it's also possible to have cells that have weak, atrophied, small mitochondria and very few of them. And there are studies where they take a big hollow needle and they jab it into people's thighs, and they take basically a muscle biopsy out of their quadricep muscle, and they put that tissue under a microscope, and they literally count the number of mitochondria in the cells. Right. And these studies have been done with people of varying ages. You take a 20-year-old muscle biopsy, a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old, 70-year-old. And these studies show something incredibly important to this story of mitochondria and energy, which is that in most people between the ages of 20 to 70 years old, their mitochondrial capacity declines by about 75%.
Incredible.
So they're losing, if their cell has, let's say, most cells of the body typically have somewhere between 500 to 2,000 mitochondria per cell. Let's say it's 1,000, okay, and they're starting from that baseline when they're 20 years old. By the time they're 70, they only have 250 in that cell.
Incredible.
Okay. So if you've got 250 instead of 1,000 in that cell, your energy producing capacity just went way, way, way down. And now people listening to this might think, well, that really sucks that the aging process causes this huge loss of mitochondria. Well, the good news is that when we look at 70-year-olds who are lifelong athletes and exercisers, they have the same mitochondrial capacity as a young adult. So what this means is that the loss of mitochondria that most people have is not just a normal product of the aging process, but it is actually the result of lack of hormetic stress in your life. lack of exposure to specific types of stressors that challenge your mitochondria and stimulate them to grow bigger and stronger, and to actually create mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria from scratch, more mitochondria. And if you are lacking hormetic stress in your life, then you lose your mitochondria in the same way that if you have a cast on your arm or your leg after breaking a bone, and after 8 weeks of wearing that cast, you get the cast off and you look down at your arm or leg, it's half the size of the other one, because all of those muscles atrophied in just 2 months. The same exact thing is happening inside of our cells at the mitochondrial level. If you don't stimulate them and challenge them, you lose them.
And so for those that don't know, what would you define a hormetic stressor as?
Hormetic stress is the principle that Nietzsche talked about when he said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Mm. And it is basically how transient stressors of various types challenge our body. They create a temporary stress on our body that stimulates us to grow stronger. So the opposite of a cast on your arm that causes non-stimulation, no challenge of those muscle fibers. The opposite is to go to a gym and lift a weight and challenge those muscle fibers. And what happens when you do that and you lift a heavy weight that is hard for you, you create a bit of damage and micro trauma to those tissues. And you, in the process, you create a stimulus on the body that stimulates the body to adapt to that by growing stronger. So that it's really the same principle as being in a cast. The body only cares about survival. So if you've got a bunch of muscle sitting inside of a cast not being used, the body is ruthless about getting rid of tissue that is not needed for survival. That's energetically costly, but not needed for survival. So literally within the span of 2 months, it's getting rid of all of this tissue that it's perceiving, hey, I guess we don't need all of that muscle tissue for survival. Let's get rid of it. On the other hand, if you're lifting a heavy weight, the body's going, oh, we need to be able to lift heavy weights in order to survive. Let's adapt to that stimulus by growing bigger, stronger muscles, building more muscle fibers onto that bicep muscle. Same principle at work. Now, this same process happens internally at the mitochondria. So if you're not stimulating them through things like exercise, heat exposure, cold exposure, exposure to the elements, physical movement of your body, low oxygen states, either through movement or breath holding practices or some combination of the two, different kinds of phytochemicals, which used to be ubiquitous. Our exposure to these phytochemicals used to be common, and now in the modern processed food diet, we have very little.
Yeah, excellent. Most people don't bring that up. Yeah, that's excellent.
And periods of food shortage. Again, in the modern world, we have an environment with grocery stores and refrigerators, so we have food on hand at all times. That didn't used to be the case for virtually all of human evolution. We had to go through periods where we had food abundance and where we had food shortage. And all of those layers of aspects of the lifestyle, the exposure to the elements, the physical movement and exercise, temporary hypoxia, phytochemicals, periods of food shortage, all of these are hormetic stressors that were a huge part of our lifestyles for virtually all of human evolution. And it's only in the last 100 years, and really in the last 70 years in particular, that we've lost virtually all of these types of hormetic stressors. And
we're cozy and comfy.
Exactly. We have a very comfortable modern lifestyle. I actually read a fascinating paper just the other day where researchers were arguing that intelligence, the actual feature of intelligence, the trait of a brain that has high levels of intelligence, evolved primarily from the stimulus of hormetic stress.
Oh, interesting.
And ironically, a big focus of how humans use their intelligence once we evolved it is to get rid of hormetic stressors that led to our intelligence in the first place. So to create an environment free of the stressors of exposure to the elements, heat and cold, by building indoor environments that are climate controlled, getting rid of the problem of food shortages by building, by farming and by creating refrigerators and technology to have food abundance all the time. To create lifestyles where we don't have to do physical labor, right? On and on and on.
Right.
There's this interesting sort of counterintuitive paradox of, the hormesis led to our intelligence. Now we're using our intelligence to get rid of hormesis. And now where I am in that cycle is teaching people that hormesis is necessary for their biology to express itself normally, to be healthy. And so now we have to use our intelligence to reintegrate forms of hormetic stress into our life.
That's definitely ironic. I just want to go real quick back for just a second, so I can wrap my head around it. Are we born with a certain number of mitochondria, and when we lose it, can we, like, for lack of a better term, regenerate them or something like that to that effect? Because I'm kind of concerned for people who might be listening to just think that, all right, they're gone. I have nothing I can do about it at this point. Yeah.
Great question. Let me answer it a bit more broadly. There's an amazing book, one of my favorite books that I've read, something that it's a book that very few people are aware of or talk about. It's called The 7 Mysteries of Life. It's one of the most amazing books I've ever read. And there's a section in this book where he talks about mitochondria, and he talks about it in many, many different animal species. And this was pretty mind-blowing when I first read it. And he talks about animal species that have very few mitochondria per cell and animal species that have huge numbers of mitochondria per cell. So the first part of the answer to your question is the number of mitochondria we have in each cell is largely genetically programmed and based on the species of animal.
Thanks to your mother.
Yes, thanks to your mother. We get our mitochondrial DNA maternally only. Yeah, thank you for adding that.
Sure.
And it's the case that a hummingbird, as an example, which I don't know the exact number of flaps per second, but it's something like 40 or 60 or 100 flaps per second. Hummingbirds have insane numbers of mitochondria per cell. I mean, their cells are just packed full of them. I think they have 300 or 500% more mitochondria per cell than a human does. And this allows these extremes of flapping their wings so fast, flying, zipping around from here to there. But it's also a survival liability. Hummingbirds have to spend pretty much every waking moment going from flower to flower to flower, sucking down sugar nectar to feed those mitochondria. And it is such a liability to have that many mitochondria per cell that at night, they literally go into like a state of almost hibernation. It's not just sleep, but it's like the deepest sleep imaginable. They shut down all the systems of their body. And I mean, if you find a sleeping hummingbird, you can pick it up and hold it in your hand, and it really won't respond to you because it's totally shut down. And the reason it shuts down the engine so strongly each night is literally so it doesn't starve to death over a single night. Wow. Because those mitochondria are burning through fuel so fast. So all of this is to say we are genetically, evolution programs different species of animals with different amounts of mitochondria per cell depending on the needs of that animal species. So in humans, we have, let's say, a moderate amount. There are many animal species that have less, many that have more. And we want enough mitochondria that we can have energy and be highly functional and move around our environments and hunt and gather and build and things like that. But not so much mitochondria that we need to be feeding ourselves every 5 minutes. Otherwise, we have to, we'll starve to death, right? So we are also capable of tolerating periods of famine and food shortage. We can go days without eating anything. And so anyway, all of that is to give a picture of mitochondria, sort of a broad picture of mitochondria in a evolutionary survival context. On an individual level, yes, we're born with a certain number of mitochondria. I'm sure that there's individual variation. Some people are born with a bit more and a bit less genetically. But to answer your question, the number of mitochondria is highly dynamic and in response to the environment. If you don't have lots of hormetic stressors built into your lifestyle, you will lose mitochondria. If you have lots of hormetic stress built into your mitochondria, you'll stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis and the creation of more mitochondria. And you can rebuild healthy, youthful levels of mitochondria through integrating hormetic stress in your life.
And that's the great news. Yeah, because simply aging, one naturally loses mitochondria if they're not using the prescription that you're talking about. So, the hormetic stress, we need that in order to create more mitochondria and the right nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's great. I'd love to go back to the supplements that you mentioned, because on the following up with what you just said, if we can encourage more mitochondrial biogenesis, then these supplements are good for that. You mentioned CoQ10, PQQ, et cetera. So I'm just curious if you've heard of urolithin A and its ability to create mitochondrial biogenesis and mitophagy, which is interesting.
So this has to do with the gut mitochondria axis. So there's a compound in certain kinds of foods. It's called ellagic acid or ellagitannins. And there's very small amounts in some foods like berries, but it's richest in two foods, pomegranates and chestnuts. And they have large amounts of this ellagic acid. And ellagic acid, when it reaches our gut, is converted by specific species of bacteria into a compound called urolithin A. There are other urolithins as well that also play a role in our health as well. But urolithin A is basically the most powerful promoter of mitophagy that's sort of ever been discovered. So the gut converts the ellagic acid into urolithin A. Urolithin A gets in the bloodstream, floats around the bloodstream, gets to our mitochondria, where it powerfully stimulates mitophagy, which is basically autophagy at the mitochondrial level. The sort of chemical digestion and breakdown, the body getting rid of dysfunctional, broken mitochondria and rebuilding healthy ones. And this is a process that is like a quality control process for our mitochondria. It's important for a number of reasons. Preventing cancer being a really important one, but also maintaining a healthy pool of mitochondria, of non-dysfunctional, highly functioning mitochondria is, of course, extremely important for maintaining high energy levels as well. So that's one. This urolithin A is one of the key aspects of a healthy gut mitochondria axis.
Yeah, and what reminded me was you had mentioned the studies, right? And so one of the studies I came across, actually 3 of them, showed that I believe it was Amazentis, the research foundation, the research company, they actually took biopsies of 60-year-olds, 60 to 70-year-olds, and giving them the urolithin A, the supplement urolithin A, they increased markedly their mitochondria. It was incredible. Like the graph went straight up, and that was just in 8 weeks. So it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I suspect there's many other layers of this kind of thing happening that we just haven't even done the research to identify.
Good point.
Probably other research. There's probably other phytochemicals that also turn into urolithin A or other urolithins that also benefit mitochondrial function. And it's probably not just unique to pomegranate and chestnuts and urolithin A. There's probably, I would guess, at least a dozen or so similar pathways that exist with other kinds of phytochemicals stimulating similar processes that are naturally occurring in many different foods.
So Ari, I think one of the things that I wanted to make clear, just because, again, just with the focus on weight loss and weight management, the mitochondrial energy, is that distinct from actual like calories in, calories out, or the concept that, I mean, I don't think Lori and I necessarily believe in calories in, calories out, but the concept of energy and unutilized energy is converted into fat. Is there a thing between the two?
There's definitely a thing between the two. Yeah, I mean, it certainly relates to, let's say, just as a way of doing a thought experiment here, you didn't provide any calories to your system for weeks, just as a thought experiment. First of all, the body has to pull energy from somewhere in the absence of it being provided with food. So it's going to pull it from your tissues on your body. It'll pull it from fat. It'll pull it from catabolizing muscle tissue. And yeah, the energy produced by mitochondria has to come from somewhere. It can't be pulled out of thin air magically. Having said that, I don't know what the specific mathematical equation it would be that sort of you could say this many calories leads to this much ATP. You can break it down in nutritional biochemistry, and you can say this many molecules of ATP are created by 1 gram of fat or 1 gram of carbohydrates, and you can look at the glycolysis process, and you can look at beta oxidation and just mitochondrial respiration, and you can do that. And so I guess you can do that math. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the exact math is, though.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's it's interesting because you probably know this, Ari, the amount in poundage of mitochondria we have. Have you heard that stat? It's pounds and pounds of mitochondria we carry.
I think you might be referring to this stat. I don't know the pounds of mitochondria, but what I have seen talked about a number of times is that every single day the mitochondria produce something like, I think it's either 80 or 180 kilograms of ATP.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
So they're producing that much in the weight of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is cellular energy.
Amazing. Yeah.
And that's being recycled constantly every day.
That is so amazing. Yeah. So in terms of other supplements, do you find them all effective in terms of creating mitochondrial health? Overall optimal health?
There's a number of supplements that I would recommend for mitochondrial health, and
which is in the book, right?
Yeah, I have a whole chapter in my book. There's a chapter on superfoods and a chapter on super supplements for mitochondrial health. A couple of my favorites that I'll mention. One is called NT Factor. It's a patented phospholipid supplement. I'm actually surprised how few people know about it because the research is amazing. There's a wonderful paper by a researcher named Garth Nicholson called Lipid Replacement Therapy. And this patented form of phospholipid extract with phospholipids, things like phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylethanolamine, and several others, are cellular membranes and mitochondrial membranes are composed of phospholipids. And with mitochondrial damage and dysfunction, those membranes can get damaged. This phospholipid, this patented form of phospholipids, has actually been shown to enter into the intestines intact, enter into the bloodstream intact, and actually make it to your mitochondria, where those phospholipids can actually help repair damaged mitochondrial membranes. Now, what's cool about this is not just sort of a mechanism-based theory where it just stops as, it's repairing mitochondrial membranes, and theoretically that will translate into more energy. They've actually researched this supplement in multiple different kinds of chronic fatigue, in several studies in chronic fatigue syndrome, several studies in aging-associated chronic fatigue, several in obesity-related chronic fatigue, and a couple others like Gulf War illness and so on.
Do you personally use it?
Yeah, not only do I personally use it, it's in my mitochondrial formula, Energenesis. It's one of the key compounds in there. So,
wow. Okay.
So it's been shown in those studies, in numerous studies, to increase energy levels by 30-40% in the span of, some of these studies are only 4 weeks long, some are 12 weeks long, but huge improvements in energy levels as a result of just this one supplement. So that's one of my favorites for sure.
When you think about all the health benefits related to mitochondrial health, it's just, you probably only need that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's another study where they took elderly adults, I think, who were in their I think it was above age 65 or 70. And they showed 12 weeks of health to the same level as healthy 29-year-olds.
Wow.
So this is a super powerful supplement, and it's kind of shocking to me that so few people know about it.
Yeah.
So another one I'll mention is spirulina is a really wonderful one. There's not actually that much research on spirulina and mitochondria. It's something that it just hasn't been studied much yet, but I would suspect that there's a lot going on there. There are a number of studies on spirulina showing really amazing benefits to so many different parameters of metabolic health, from lowering, improving blood lipids, cholesterol levels, improving blood sugar and insulin sensitivity, improving blood pressure, improving overall antioxidant status, improving there's studies showing improved athletic performance and energy levels. Spirulina has similar effects on many of those parameters to prescription drugs, and it's without the side effects. It's while having beneficial side effects instead of negative ones. So spirulina, as much as it's known and talked about, and like you can find spirulina in every juice bar and every sort of new age hippie, supplementing with spirulina, it's actually it's amazing to actually look at the scientific research on it. It's not just some hippy dippy nonsense. It's really amazing stuff.
It is. We had Kathy Arnston with Energy Bits on our show a couple times.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I know, isn't she? Yeah, and I was totally blown away with the benefits. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe I'll mention one more. Rhodiola rosea it's often talked about as like an adaptogenic herb in the context of adrenal fatigue. And actually, it has many, many beneficial effects throughout the body. It modifies neurotransmitter levels, has neuroprotective and anti-inflammatory actions, and it's highly active at the mitochondrial level as what's called a xenohormetic stressor, something that's stimulating these hormetic pathways to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis and upregulate the internal antioxidant defense system of mitochondria, helping them to be more robust and protected from damage from stressors. And the research on rhodiola is actually kind of mind-blowing. Some of the research is so impressive that it actually makes me skeptical. There are studies where they've taken people with stress-related fatigue and shown 50% improvements in their energy levels, cutting their level of fatigue by 50% in 1 week. Literally in 7 days, they're cutting people's levels of fatigue in half, which is a huge improvement in energy levels in just 7 days. And then further reductions out to 4 weeks and 8 weeks. This has been shown in a number of studies. So, in the context of people who are so severely fatigued that they just don't have the energy for more in-depth lifestyle, nutritional interventions or exercise, things like that. These are wonderful tools to use with almost no effort, like basically zero effort, and you can get huge improvements in your energy within days or weeks that give you the energy to work on some of these other aspects of your nutrition and lifestyle habits.
So Ari, to that point, what is your opinion of coffee then? Because that's our crutch usually.
Yeah, wouldn't it be wonderful if solving the chronic fatigue epidemic was as simple as telling everybody to take more caffeine and stimulants? Yes. So, of course it doesn't work. And let's talk about why it doesn't work. So first of all, let's talk about how caffeine works in our body. our brain has a number of different neurotransmitters in it, and it's always trying to maintain a certain balance of these different neurotransmitters. Some of these neurotransmitters are stimulating, energizing. Some of them are more relaxing, what's called inhibitory, and lower our energy, make us relaxed or sleepy, fatigued. And depending on, the time of day, whether it's 9 a.m. or midnight, the brain is trying to regulate a different balance of those neurotransmitters, but it's always trying to regulate a certain balance of them. It doesn't want to be overly stimulated. It doesn't want to be overly relaxed. It's trying to maintain the appropriate balance in that context. Now, one of these inhibitory neurotransmitters is called adenosine. And adenosine is this neurotransmitter in the brain, and when it hits the neurotransmitter, the adenosine receptors in the brain, when it fits into those receptors, it triggers a cascade that basically makes you low energy, sleepy, tired, and fatigued. The way that caffeine works is by acting on those adenosine receptors. It fits into those exact same receptors that adenosine fits in, only when it fits in them, it doesn't trigger the same cascade of effects that adenosine triggers. It just plugs up the receptor, preventing adenosine from getting in. So by blocking a neurotransmitter that would be making you feel sleepy and fatigued, it creates a stimulant, energizing effect. Now, all of that sounds really wonderful, and it is really wonderful in the short term. Yeah. So if you take what's called in literature caffeine naive people who don't normally consume caffeine, you give them caffeine, you can measure, as many studies have, various kinds of improvements in energy levels, in cognitive performance, in reaction time, in physical performance, in stamina, and time to exhaustion, and cycling, and many, many other improvements. But the problem is, once you use caffeine on a daily basis for even longer than just about 2 weeks, 2 weeks is all it takes, all those benefits are canceled out. And the reason why is that the brain, as I said before, likes a certain balance of those neurotransmitters. It doesn't want to be overly stimulated. It doesn't want to be overly relaxed and low energy. So what caffeine is doing is basically sending a signal to the brain of you're being overly stimulated, and very much in the same vein as what I was talking about before with, what signal are you sending your body if you lift a heavy weight? Body tries to adapt to grow stronger. What signal are you sending your body by challenging your mitochondria? Mitochondria adapt by growing stronger. The body's always trying to adapt to the stimuli that it's being placed under. So if you're overstimulating the brain adapts to that situation by bringing things back into balance. And the way that it brings things back into balance from an overstimulated state is by creating negative neurotransmitter adaptations. It creates more adenosine and more adenosine receptors. So as soon as that caffeine leaves your system now, you have much higher levels of adenosine signaling going on in your brain. There's more adenosine hitting more adenosine receptors, triggering that cascade of events that results in lowering your energy and your wakefulness and making you sleepy and fatigued. So the only other part that most people have a difficult time understanding with this is they go, well, when I drink my caffeine, I get a boost from it. So subjectively, they feel like they're getting more energy from the caffeine. What the scientific literature is clear on, and yet very few people are aware of, is that this effect is entirely due to something called withdrawal reversal. So if you've ever heard this term withdrawal, this is a term used in drug addiction, like people who are addicted to cocaine or heroin or alcoholics. When you are chronically consuming that drug and then you go off of it, you get these, you feel horrible, you have symptoms of withdrawal. believe it or not, with caffeine, that effect of withdrawal, symptoms from withdrawal, happens on a daily basis, every single day when that caffeine leaves your system. And that's why people who are chronic caffeine consumers, who consume it every day, especially multiple cups of coffee or using stimulants every single day, if you watch how they wake up, almost invariably, they'll wake up in a state of like half sleep, where they're almost in a zombie-like state. Their brain and their body hasn't turned on yet. And then first thing they have to do is go make themselves a cup of coffee. And then 15 minutes later, their brain will start to turn on. Now, what's happening, so the boost that they feel is actually just, it's not a real boost above their normal level of function, what used to be their normal level of function. It's actually just the caffeine created these negative effects, which lowered their baseline levels of energy. And that's the withdrawal symptom, is you now have poorer energy levels, poorer cognitive performance. And now when you consume the coffee, it is actually just taking you back up to what used to be your normal levels of mood and energy and cognitive performance. So it's not a real boost. It's actually just the reversal of the negative effects that the caffeine induced. In other words, you've made yourself dependent on caffeine to function at what used to be your normal level of function.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I use caffeine, when I use coffee, I don't feel any different than when I don't use it, which I know is kind of strange. But
and there's also quite a bit of individual variability. There's also research talking about, in some people, they have such a significant anxiety and jittery response to the caffeine that it negates any benefits which might otherwise occur to, for example, cognitive performance, because the anxiety itself is a damaging symptom.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Ari. And, you are incredible, and you have dropped a whole lot of information today that is really useful, practical. And so I know that your book has it all. And so where can the listeners find your book? Where can they, find you, all of that good stuff? Because I know you're on social media, and I know you have this incredible best-selling book out there, Eat for Energy, and you're on social media. So and also you have programs out there too.
Yeah, my website is theenergyblueprint.com, but I would say right now, just go grab my new book, and you can get that anywhere you want to buy books online. Amazon is a great place to get it. And
your podcast.
Yeah, my podcast is there too. It's the Energy Blueprint podcast you can find on iTunes. But
that's excellent.
The book is awesome. It just came out on May 10th, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's packed with a huge amount of strategies. Also, I want to mention this is not a typical diet book where I'm sort of saying, hey, everybody's got it wrong. It's not vegan, and it's not low fat, and it's not keto, and it's not paleo, and it's not Mediterranean. Really, here's the one true best way to eat. It's nothing like that. This is not a dogmatic one size fits all. Well,
you've never been that
diet.
way. Yeah.
No, I have not. And this is actually just a totally flexible, non-dogmatic set of nutritional strategies that you can pick and choose from, like a buffet, to integrate into your lifestyle and your dietary pattern, whatever that pattern may be, anything from keto to paleo to vegan, whatever it is. You can pick and choose from these strategies and integrate some of these superfoods and some of these supplements. And the supplement chapter by itself, honestly, is worth the price of admission just by itself. It's like an encyclopedia of science on energy boosting supplements that you really won't find anywhere else. So highly recommend people go grab the new book.
Yeah, it's fantastic from everything that I've heard and read, and what you're talking about. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was a lot of fun, and thank you for asking such great questions.
Oh,
and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, really. Thank you, Ari.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you've really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.